Sri S. Niranjan Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. My party supports the bill. There are many reasons why the bill needs to be salutary. It has been spoken about. Given the short time, I would rather focus on a few things that I think the government may have to be aware of. First, Madam, I feel that the pre-litigation, mandatory pre-litigation mediation that has been provided under Section 6, in the longer run will be very useful. But I have one concern which I wanted to bring it to the notice of the government. First, that if this pre-litigation mediation is mandatory, it means that the moment the bill is passed, no person in India, in any Mofussil area, in any district court will be able to file a civil suit from the next date, because the courts will say you will have to do a mediation. Very good suggestion, because in the long run it will help. My suggestion for the government, therefore, Madam, is that first they must ensure that the mediation infrastructure is created, because there's a Mediation Council of India. They will have to train people. People will have to be registered as mediators. The moment that happens, then I think this provision can be enforced. Thankfully, the government has thought through. The government has provided in Section 1 that it can bring into force various sections at different times. And the government has been doing that in IBC, in Companies Act, where different provisions have been brought into force at different times. So my first concern, therefore, sir, is, Madam, is that if this act is passed, if this section is notified immediately, it may create a lot of problems for litigants who are going to the court for the purpose of seeking a relief. The second concern I have, Madam, is that there is a provision now made that because there will be a pre-litigation mediation which is mandatory, if any party needs an urgent order, they will have to go to the court for the purpose of seeking an interim relief. That is Section 8 of the proposed bill. This is again a very good feature, because eventually when pre-litigation mediation becomes mandatory and enforceable, as and when government notifies it, we will need a provision like this where some person having an urgent necessity of an interim order may have to go to court. But the problem, ma'am, I see is that if some person approaches the court and takes an interim order, there is a similar provision under the Arbitration Act, which is Section 9. There is no appeal provided against this order. And quite a few times we see that people go to the court, the trial court may make a mistake in giving an order. At least one appeal needs to be provided. I think the government decided not to have an appeal provision because it might delay the process. While I understand the reason why they are not providing for an appeal, I would request the government to consider if they would want to make one of these first round of an order made in an interim, like under Section 9 of the Arbitration Act, any interim order, there is an appeal that can be maintained to the court, which regularly hears the appeal. Then the third concern which I have, because the committee recommended that the mediation period needs to be reduced from 180 days. The Act now provides for 180 days plus 180 days. While I understand the reason that they may want to be practical to ensure that it is that the mediation actually has the time space for ensuring it is going to work out. Once the pre-litigation mediation is going to be made mandatory, as and when the government decides notify it, then if some person wants to delay the litigation, in litigation, Madam, one party will always be interested in delaying it because they benefit. Then 180 days plus 180 days in pre-litigation mediation would mean for a period of 1 year, except for the interim order which is not appealable, a party may not be able to go to court. This I would request the government to consider once. Then the last of the suggestions I have is the mediation service provider can be approached for appointing a mediator where two parties are not able to agree. But when they approach the mediation service provider, the Act provides that this service provider must appoint a mediator within 7 days. There is no default clause, because we have seen under the Arbitration Act when there is a Section 11 when person can approach the court. We have seen for years together the arbitrators are not appointed. So my recommendation therefore would be that if a person is not appointed as a mediator within 7 days by the mediation service provider, maybe the government may need to think if they would want to enable a party to approach the court. My last quick suggestion, sir, is any mediation that is procured under a Singapore Convention outside India that has not been made enforceable in India. India is doing this mediation bill by virtue of being a signatory to the Singapore Convention. My recommendation would be quite like the Indian mediation settlements would be enforceable outside. Outside settlements will become enforceable in India if they were to make a provision for enforcement at the appropriate stage. I thank the chairperson, vice chairperson for granting me the opportunity. I support the bill.